Hi, my name is Donn Felker. I'm an independent consultant, and in this current screencast we're going to cover Spark named content areas. Spark named content areas are areas in which you can provide content at any given location inside of your Spark views based upon the master page and the named content area that you provide. Out of the box, Spark provides you with one named content area that is the convention of the view. This is located anywhere inside of your Spark application file. So this would be your application.spark file, also known usually as the master page inside of the MVC Web Forms view engine. Anytime a Spark view is rendered, the contents of that view are going to be replaced inside of this named content area called view. Now the name of this named content area is view itself. Underneath the hood, the named content area is actually just a text writer, and we'll get into that in a second. We can also provide other content areas where we can place content at runtime based upon the view. So let's, for example, state that we have a view that uses a particular JavaScript file, maybe a Google Maps JavaScript file, to show the location of perhaps some stores. And it's only used in one view. However, you don't want that JavaScript file to show up in the middle of your HTML 300 lines down. You would like that JS script reference to be up in the head element of your HTML document. Inside of the Spark application file, you can provide a named content area called head, where you can actually force your information and your content to be shown up inside of the head, while the rest of your view will be shown inside of this location. Another example might be, based upon a certain page, you'd like to add something to the sidebar portion of your application. Maybe your application has a sidebar to display information to the end user, letting them know about little tips and tricks about the application. And you want to shove some information in there depending upon what page you're in. Spark allows you to do this by creating another named content section and just giving it the name of sidebar. So this is exactly what we're doing here, is we're giving it the content section name of sidebar. Up here we're having a named content section of head. And these are custom content sections. Again, by default, this is the default content section for Spark to replace the view's contents in this area. Now getting back to the text writers, underneath the hood, Spark uses text writers to control the content of these named content areas. So in this instance, we actually have 3 text writers. We have a text writer for head, we have a text writer called view, and we have a text writer called sidebar. As Spark starts rendering the view, if it encounters named content areas called head, it'll switch the text writer from the default view text writer up to the head text writer. And then as it's running, if it encounters a sidebar content area, it'll switch whatever text writer it's in, either head or view, down to the sidebar text writer. And in the end, what ends up happening is the content gets shoved into the head for the head text writer, the view's text writer contents get shoved into the view content area, and the sidebar's text area of content gets shoved into this content area right here, sidebar. Now this is kind of a lot to take in, so let's take a look at a real quick example. Inside of our example 1.spark file, what I can actually state is I can say content name equals head is one way I can shove content into the head. And this is going to shove it up into the head area of the page. So, and I can also say, so I can put this and say, hello. So this is going to shove a comment into the head area of the application. So if we look at the example 1, refresh the page, look at the source, we can actually see that inside of our head directory we have now added a hello comment. Now there's no page content because I haven't added any page content yet. So let's go ahead and do that. If I add some regular content down here saying this is some stuff, this will show up in the view area because this is the default text writer. As soon as we are not inside of a named content area, it will default back to the default text writer, which is the view text writer. Now if I refresh this again, we will see that this is some stuff show up inside of the page content area, which is where the default view text writer writes to. So now I have organized content into the head area as well as into the page content area as well. So this is one way you can actually write to the named content head. Another way you can do this is to provide a colon and type head. This is the way that I prefer to use it. It just seems a little cleaner, less keystrokes for me, so I prefer this method. Does the same exact code. We have the same thing. Hello. This is some stuff. Now we can also shove something into the sidebar as well. And this doesn't matter. I could put something in the sidebar too. So I could say content sidebar. Whoops. So I can say content sidebar there. And I say, you know, this is sidebar content. So this is sidebar content there, and we'll actually take a look and see that there's our head document stuff. There's our page content, and now we're in a sidebar div right here, which is where inside of our application.cs, excuse me, our application.spark file, we have the sidebar element. We have the view element. We have the head element. So all content, depending upon what named content area is getting shoved into the appropriate area. So this doesn't really matter what order it's in either. So I could shove this sidebar stuff up to the top. I could put this head stuff at the bottom. You know, any given area I could do this in, and I could refresh the page. And it's not going to mess it up. Spark figures out what content writer it should go into and places it in the appropriate location. Hello still in the right place, some stuff still in the right place, and the sidebar content is still in the correct place. Even though our HTML looks completely wonky. We have sidebar above the content, we have this head stuff at the bottom. I can put it anywhere I want it. It doesn't matter because Spark is just going to use text writers, and at the end Spark's just going to do a toString on these text writers and output the contents to these named content areas and just pop them in there. Now the real benefit of this starts coming into play when we start getting into certain examples where we may have an example where maybe my example 1.spark file needs to use a jQuery slide. So I'm going to include jQuery up here. And you know, I'm just going to pop jQuery up top here real quick, and we'll refresh this, and you'll see that jQuery is now popped into here up top. So I use the jQuery.js file. It's in my head script. I have now allowed myself to push all my JS and CSS to the head and make my HTML nice and clean and pretty and conform it, which is great. But then later on I realized, well, you know, I also need to use the bar partial in here too, because I need to have some other functionality that bar does for me. Well, if we go look at bar, we realize that bar shows something into the head too. Well, it says, well, bar needs to put jQuery in the head too, because maybe bar utilizes the jQuery Ajax tools, and it needs to use something from jQuery to do something. So it says, hey, you know what? I also need jQuery. Let's pop it at the top. Okay, well, it's not a big deal. So it's going to take jQuery, and it's going to shove jQuery at the top twice. And then there's my regular content that says this is this is bar right here, which is the output of the Spark partial. So Spark partial has now been rendered into the regular view because that's the default content area. But the problem is I have two jQuery JS references, and that's not really what we want. I mean, we don't want to reference the same file twice or etc. So Spark allows us to get around this with the once attribute, and we give it a name. So we're going to say, I'm just going to give this a name of jQuery. And what this is saying is, I only want jQuery to show up if I ever find a script tag with these attributes right here, src equals jQuery.js. If I find this more than once, remove every other instance. So I'm going to say on this side jQuery as well. So I only want jQuery to show up once. So on both sides, on the example 1.spark and bar.spark, I'm applying the once attribute. And what this states is, only allow jQuery.js to show up once. So if we look at the source before, again this is before we refresh it, we have jQuery showing up twice. I've now added that code to make it only to say I would only like jQuery to show up once. We refresh it. What that's done is now said Spark reads through the head content area and says, well, looks like I've already seen this script jQuery.js thing once before, and you've asked me only to make it show up once, so therefore I'm going to ignore all future references to it. A nice key thing about this too is it's not really, if I had a bunch of spaces in here and developer B adds space here and they like all this junk here, and this guy has really crisp code, and he doesn't like any spaces, this other guy's really sloppy, he doesn't care, it doesn't matter. Spark will still recognize that, strip that white space out, and give us one script tag there. So this eliminates your get requests, etc. on your page. It eliminates your page weight because you don't have extra script tags or etc. in there. So if you're referencing jQuery 25 times, you can ensure that you only have it referenced once on your page. Your page can be a little bit lighter, etc. So with these named content areas, you can include named content areas all over your application. Provide small little extensibility points. Allow yourself to organize your HTML as you see fit, according to your standards, maybe even according to certain HTML compliance, etc. And allows you to provide the flexibility that you may need to provide the output that you're looking for on your day-to-day application development. So I hope you enjoyed this screencast. Until next time, thank you.